pretty big. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessie, and today we are talking about most of my favorite books of all time. So here is the Leaning Tower of my favorite books, and I thought this would be a great reference to refer to as some of my favorite books of all time. So definitely get comfortable. We've got quite a bit. I think there's two that I don't even have here physically, so let's just jump right into it. Before I get into these books, let me just go ahead and get to the two that I don't have here physically because they're currently being borrowed. But I would say one of my favorite thrillers that got me started into reading is actually Mr. Perfect by Linda Howard. I've actually talked about this one quite a bit. It is a very much older book. I think it was like published in 2000 or 2001, so it is quite older. One of the main reasons why I love this one is not only because it got me into reading thrillers, but also romantic thrillers. This one is about a woman named Jane, and she just bought a house, and she has a neighbor that she doesn't like because he comes in at all weird hours of the night. But then also she works for this company and has three best friends that she works with. Well, one night after work, they all meet up at this like local bar and just kind of have some drinks, and then one thing leads to another. They actually make a list of what makes a perfect man, both physically and, you know, mentally. And the list goes viral. It actually goes out to all these news outlets. So yeah, someone finds out about this list and wants to take matter into their own hands, so they decide to go as far as murder. So love this one, highly recommend. The other one that I don't have right now is The Perfect Marriage. This one, I know a lot of people have heard about this one because it went viral on TikTok. This one is so good. Like, even the synopsis hooked me right away. But you have a woman who is a very successful defense attorney, and she gets a call that her husband has been arrested for the murder of his mistress. And then our main character decides to defend him and be his attorney. I'm telling you, this book had me like freaking out on the very last page. So definitely give this one a shot if you are curious. Okay, so now let's get into the physical stack that's been sitting next to me. These are in like no particular order, so I'm literally just going to start from the top. One of my favorite summer domestic thrillers is The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. I will say, out of all of their books, this one is my favorite, and nothing has ever came close to beating this one. But this one is so good. You follow this girl named Amber, and she is wanting to basically take over another woman's life, whether it's her marriage and her family. And she kind of sneaks in on like a friendship level. But this book is just so good. It took a little bit to get into, but like once you're like in, you're like, man, this Amber chick is so messed up. But there is a whole lot more to the story. This one would be perfect for a good summer read. I know we're technically in October right now, but I personally recommend this one all the time, and people who have picked it up said they loved it. So definitely check this one out. The next one that I want to talk about was something that I read this year, and it is Playing Nice by J.P. Delaney. I actually did a buddy read with my friend Gwen on this one, and I actually gifted her a copy for her birthday gift. And let me just tell you, this is not your typical thriller. This one follows a family where it's a husband and wife and their son, and basically they're told by some random guy and his private investigator that their sons were switched at birth, and our main character has the wrong son. And so what I love about this book is it makes you think, like, what would you do? Because basically, do you swap them back? Do you keep the son you've loved and raised for the past 2 or 3 years? Like, it definitely makes you think, like, not like who the killer is or all this other stuff. It's not a traditional thriller, but I loved this book. This one is so good. It is a little bit on the thicker side, but listening to the audiobook, I was able to get this done in like 2 days. Like, this book was so good. It's very fast paced, even though it's not a whole lot of like action going on. It's just a lot of stuff like behind the scenes that you're like, Oh my god, this is like seriously happening. So I would definitely check this one out if you haven't already. Another viral TikTok book recommendation that I read very recently was The Arrangement by Kristen Moglen. I originally saw this book on Jacqueline's channel and she loved it, and she was talking about how TikTok made it go viral, and I was like, oh okay. But then my TikTok started blowing up about this book, so I was like, okay, let me check it out. It's literally 225 pages. So small, but this book definitely packs a punch. This book is so good. This one involves a married couple who are literally struggling in their marriage, and somehow their only option is to do this plan or arrangement that they've made. So basically on, I think it's like Tuesday nights, the wife will go out and see other people like on this dating app. And then on Thursdays, the husband gets to do the same thing, but then they're not allowed to talk about it, which is kind of weird, kind of crazy. Like, I don't know how I would feel about my husband being okay, even just being okay with this. This book is just so crazy. It's very fast paced. It speeds up and things just happen, and I'm not mentally prepared for it, and it was so good. It doesn't really sound like a thriller, but it is, and it has a little bit of a romantic like subplot to it about like the whole marriage. But this book is so good. If you haven't checked it out on TikTok, check it out, see what it's all about, and pick you up a copy. Okay, I'm going to give you guys like a little sneak peek of probably one of my favorite books I've read this year. Okay, are you ready? Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. Guys, freaking 5-star book. This book was so good. I'm so happy I read this one. Alice Feeney is one of those authors that every time I read a book by her, she's slowly starting to become one of my favorite authors. And then I read this one and mind blown. Automatically an auto by author. This one is kind of hard to explain without giving too much away. Basically, you have this married couple, and again, they're struggling in their marriage. The wife wins this trip to this little chapel in the middle of nowhere, and she uses that winning to like rebuild her marriage with her husband. But they go to this chapel and like some spooky shit starts happening, and it's one of those books where I'm like, is it paranormal? Is it not? But then also I'm like, the husband has a lot of secrets, the wife has a lot of secrets, some spooky shit goes down. This book is so good. Absolutely loved it. I heard it's being made into a movie as well, and I'm all on board about that. Another book that I loved that not a lot of people talk about, and I have recommended it, and most people give it like 4 or 5 stars, but I loved this one, and I literally read this in one sitting at an airport and on the plane. But it's For Better and Worse by Margot Hunt. Absolutely love this one. You have 2 main characters where they're first, the prologue starts where they're in college. They're both trying to be defense attorneys and things like that, and they talk about how stupid criminals are and how they don't get away with murder, and how they jokingly say, oh, we could totally get away with a perfect murder. Now, like 10 years later, they're married, they have a son, and something happens at the son's school where some inappropriate behavior behind the principal happens with some of the kids, and the parents kind of think maybe their son may have been one of the kids involved in that. And so the wife actually wants to take matters into their own hands. Loved this book. This is another highly recommended book. I definitely check this one out. I've tried to read other stuff by this author, but again, it's just one of those where this book is just so good and I don't like any of the other ones. So, okay, one of my most recommended book to me and from me is Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. And I'm sorry, this is probably the only book by B.A. Paris that is worth mentioning. I know a lot of people love this book. I don't even know how to describe this book without giving too much away, but it's dual timelined, and you have our main character Grace, and she's married to this guy named Jack, and you you have chapters of the present day, but also like in the past when they're meeting. And there's just some very shady stuff going on behind closed doors. But it definitely opens up and you're just like, something just doesn't feel right with this couple. And yeah, I love this book. Definitely read this one if you haven't. One book that was a pleasant surprise when I first ordered it is Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. I don't think I've read, I think this is my first Jennifer Hillier book, and I loved this book. This book is so dark, so twisted. Like, it definitely has like some very triggering material in this one, but I love this one. This one, it's kind of weird because like the timeline's a little odd, but you have our main character, Geo. She is first being arrested for possibly having involvement in a murder that happened when she was in high school. Then we're following her like throughout prison, getting released, but also what happened in high school. And basically she's arrested because she may have known or had some kind of involvement in the murder of her best friend that her boyfriend actually did do and became a serial killer. Loved this book. It is so dark and so twisted. Like, I think at one point it had me crying when like the actual act happened. And this book, love this book. This is probably still my all-time favorite Jennifer Hillier book. I have read other things by this author, but this one is still one that I go to and recommend. Next, this is the book that got me started on my Lucinda Berry kick. It is The Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry. Heard there's a sequel coming out. Not sure how I feel about that. I kind of feel like if I read it, it's going to kind of ruin the love I have for this one. But this one follows two doctors or two people in the medical field, and basically a child is brought in that is so severely abused, malnourished and everything, and the couple have been trying so hard to conceive a baby and they just haven't had any luck. And this child comes in and both doctors are like attached to this child and the child is attached to them, and one thing leads to another. They actually end up like getting like a temporary adoption for the child, and that's when things go south. Like, this child kind of seems a little messed up, so I would definitely recommend this one. I've also been told that if you liked The Push by Ashley Aldrain, you would like this one, and vice versa, so definitely give this one a shot. Another book that was highly recommended, but I pushed it off for so long, is My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. This one, I don't know what it is, but the cover really was like, not sure if I'm gonna like this one. But holy crap, I love this one. This one, like, the synopsis totally makes sense. It's like Dexter meets Mr. and Mrs. Smith. This book is so good. You have a married couple that may or may not be like kidnapping women and murdering as like a way to keep their marriage alive. I don't know what drives people to do this stuff, but I just find it very fascinating. But basically, yeah, this couple are murderers basically, and they've been doing it for like a year and shit goes down. And yeah, highly recommend this one. Loved the audiobook as well. This one is just so good, and yeah, definitely check this one out. Speaking of another book with a good audio and a very short book, I would recommend I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This one may be also considered horror maybe, but I read it during a big thriller kick, so I would consider a thriller. But this book is so short, but I absolutely loved this one. Read this in one sitting. The audiobook at the end had me so creeped out, like I had goosebumps. But essentially you were following a woman who is going to her boyfriend's house to meet the family. I think it's Thanksgiving. I could be wrong though. But they're going to go meet the family, and when she gets there, like, parents are so flippin' weird, and like the goosebumps and creepiness of this book literally, like, it's so weird. but as they're leaving, they kind of make like a pit stop and then like real shit goes down. There is a Netflix movie. I highly recommend you don't watch the movie and just read the book. But yeah, this one is so, so good. It will definitely confuse you, but then it also has like a metaphoric meaning in the end. So yeah, just be prepared that you may have to do a little bit of extra thinking at the end, but I loved this one. One thriller that I loved because of how it was set up is The Rona Girls by Amy Engel. This one I loved because you know what's happening, like, from the start, basically. Like, you know what messed up and like who's doing what. And it's so creepy, but it never flat out tells you until the end. And it's so disturbing. And it's like, why is this happening? Why is no one talking about this? It does have a little bit of some triggers. I don't want to personally tell you just because, again, it does say it pretty early on in the book. But yeah, this book was so good. It's a very short book as well. I loved this one. Yeah, didn't see the twist coming at the end either, but the disturbing material that happened in this book literally had me hooked to continue reading. It's kind of like a train wreck. You just can't look away. So I would recommend this one as well. My very first book by this author had me hooked, and I had to read everything else by her, even though this is still top tier in this like subgenre that she writes in. But Verity by Colleen Hoover, you guys, if you want a great romantic thriller, this is your book. I loved this book. It had so many disturbing things happened, and it does have another thing that I kind of like in books, and I didn't realize this until just now, but it has like a book inside of a book, and then it also has like an ambiguous ending. Typically don't like those, but this one I loved. This one follows a woman who is a writer, and she's kind of down on her luck, and she kind of gets this opportunity to like ghostwrite for the infamous Verity, who was in a car wreck and is basically like a vegetable, and she can't finish writing her series. So our main character is offered quite a bit of money to finish, I think, like the last like 3 books in the series that Verity has written. And so she's also offered to stay at Verity's home with her husband and her child. And while she's like preparing to write, she finds an unpublished manuscript of like a biography or autobiography by Verity, and it is so dark and twisted. Definitely Hey! I'm talking! Definitely lots of triggers, so I would definitely do your research if you're easily triggered by the material in this. But yeah, love this book. I've read it 2 or 3 times, and I've loved it every single time. 5 stars. So the next set of books I'm going to quickly go through and just give you very brief synopsises of what they're about, just because there are 5 books, because they're all done by the same author. But anything by Riley Sager, definitely worth reading. I love his books, and one of them I actually hated, but I fell in love with it. So I personally think you should read them in publication order. But if you want to know my personal ranking from least favorite to favorite, I'll tell you. Least favorite would have to be Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I actually originally DNF'd this one, mostly because I saw another influencer kind of ruin the spoiler of this book, and I was like, that is so stupid. Like, why would I continue reading? So I DNF'd it. I actually did a rereading vlog of it. I can kind of link it down below and in the cards if you want. But I did a reread of this one and absolutely loved it. I gave it 4 stars though, just because, again, I was spoiled by the ending. This one follows a girl who is taking a job opportunity to stay in this infamous building, and things go crazy in the middle of the night, and other apartment sitters go missing, and she kind of digs into it. The next one I would say would be Final Girls. This is his debut. Absolutely love this one. All the other ones are 5-star reads for me, but this one has that final girl trope that I know is really popular going on right now. But basically, we have a final girl who kind of gets notified that a few other final girls that she knows of has died or been murdered. And so the story kind of takes off from there, and she kind of digs a little bit. Absolutely love this one. This was my first read by him. Next, I would say The Last Time I Lied. This has a lot of like summer camp vibes. Like if you like the Friday the 13th movie franchise, I think you would like this one. Basically, some girls disappeared from this summer camp, and our main character, who was really good friends with them, has never really, you know, healed from that trauma, and the summer camp is now being reopened, and she's offered a job to come back as like a counselor, and she kind of digs a little bit of what really happened to those girls. Next would be his newest release, which is Survive the Night. I absolutely loved this one. This one has all the 90s feels if you were born in the 90s, but our main character gets a ride so she can go home. Her best friend was just murdered by the campus killer, and so she actually gets like this carpool, like she ends up carpooling with a guy that's heading her way, and the whole time you're in the car with this guy, you never know, is he the killer, is he not the killer? Love this one. And probably my favorite that I've read by him, just because I had like all the, like, I absolutely love this one because it had all the things I love in a good book, like a book inside of a book. Is this paranormal or is this made up? It would have to be Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This one involves a girl who grew up in this house her family moved into this house. I think they only stayed like 1 month into the house, and then her parents left, promising to never go back into that house. But her dad actually wrote a book about all the spooky shit that went down inside this house. Now her dad has passed away, leaving her the house that he never sold, and she goes back to try to figure out what really happened, because she's always grown up in her father's book Shadows. Love this one. Absolutely love this one. The next one would have to be No Exit by Taylor Adams. I am so excited to see how the show or movie adaptation is going to be. But this one is like a thrill ride, let me just tell you. This one involves a girl. She's trying to drive through a blizzard. Her car is not really working, so she stops at a rest stop, and there's maybe five other people there. And basically, she finds out that there is a child locked in a dog crate in the back of a van, and she's trying to figure out like who abducted this child and why they're doing this. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you think you know what's happening in this book, you're wrong. There are so many plots and twists. You'll be holding your breath the whole time reading this book. This book is just so good. Highly recommend. Sorry, I thought I had one more left, but I actually have two. I'm going to go ahead and go with this one, which is You by Carolyn Kepnes. Absolutely love this book. I know this is so overhyped, so popular, especially with the TV show. I love this one just because the audiobook is really good, and the way this book is written, it's told in second person. So basically, we have our main character, Joe Goldberg, who's kind of like stalking this girl, and he's also trying to make her fall in love with him, but he's talking to the girl. But the way he talks, it's like, you walked into the bookstore, you were wearing a green sweater, things like that. So it makes you feel like the one you're being stalked. Another reason why I love this one is because you actually kind of like feel and like root for the villain, Joe, just because like the way he explains how people are, like these awful people, you're kind of rooting for the stalker, which is so weird, but so worth it. And the last book I want to talk about is The Night Swim by Megan Golden. If you love audiobooks, definitely pick this one up because it has podcast elements in it, which I love, and I'm so looking forward to like another book similar like this. But you're following a woman who has this podcast for like true crime, and for like her third season, she is actually going to be reporting on her podcast a live like court hearing for a rape case. And you're also getting a story of two sisters that something tragic happened in their past, and somehow they're like semi-connected. And I love this one. Definitely trigger warnings for rape and sexual assault and all that stuff. So I love this one. Highly recommend. Alright guys, that is currently all of my all-time favorite thrillers that I have read. Definitely let me know what your favorite thriller is, or if you have any similar taste down below in the comments. I am so excited to share these with you, so I'm going to jump right into editing. But I hope you guys all have a great day. Make sure you subscribe so you can see more favorites in the future, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Do you know how much I love you? You put my favorite song on, I put my feet up, and we just sing along, and I can't help but feeling just loving